Welcome to Torchbearers by College Esports News. My name is Kenneth, and on this show, we talk with those carrying the flame of college esports at programs across the continent to learn from their expertise in a particular segment of our vast ecosystem. You know, it's the end of the year, and that means that we're sitting down and reflecting on the past 365 days. It's also the time of year when award shows pop up, and there's a new one on the block that specifically caters to collegiate and high school esports. In this episode, I sit down with Chris Postell, Executive Director at Esports Foundry, to get a better sense of what the Scholastic Esports Awards has to offer in its inaugural year. This conversation helped me get a better understanding of the sheer scope of the event and what to expect in Columbus on January 11th and 12th. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Neuroptima and Playfly College Esports. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Chris. Chris, welcome to Torchbearers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So right now we're actually recording this on a Friday, so it might be finally time for the weekend, which I know I'm excited for. But obviously, we'll still have work priorities when we end up returning. So the first thing that I like to start asking is, what is on the top of your mind for the next thing you've got to do work related?
Well, I would have to say that my weekend is not a time off. We
Well,
are in busy season for the fall, so we have conference operations to wrap up. We've got tournaments to do. Our team currently is in Texas right now, helping out with a high school finals. And another part of our team is hard at work fabricating. And on my side, I'm hard at work making sure that some of our upcoming projects for 2025 are going to happen in the best way possible. So we're all gears turning, firing, and we'll take a break probably in about a week or week and a half. And then we'll return right back to it and see where it all lands.
nose to the grindstone, as it typically is in the esports world.
hmm
And I want to talk about that a little bit too, because it's no mistake that you ended up in the role that you currently have. So, what is your overall story? First off, how did you get involved
Oh,
in
God.
video games? And then how did you transition that into esports and the role you're currently in?
You want the long or the short?
You can say as much or as little as you would like.
Okay, fine. Um, when I was in high school, I was introduced to a thing called the Vintage Gaming Club. I went to a small high school, and every day we would hang out if it was too cold outside or raining outside, and we would play Smash 64. And that was my first exposure really to video games outside of, oh, I have my GameCube and I'm playing with my friends from the street. And I became really close friends with all those people. And that was my first foray, and little did I know, in Scholastic Esports. And what we ended up turning that Vintage Gaming Club into was a Chipotle racketeering scam. We would accept money from kids at assembly, and we would buy Chipotle after like third period, and we would distribute it from the Vintage Gaming Club at lunch. And we made so many orders that our local Chipotle gave us a permanent 30% discount because they loved our business.
Wow.
And we never told anybody about that. So we just kept making money hand over fist, and we used that money to buy more video games. And eventually we got confronted, and we were being told that we had disrupted this cafeteria's bottom line, and we were respectfully asked to stop, and Vintage Gaming Club had to come to an end. It didn't.
Wow.
And years later, I would learn retroactively that one of the students that was a couple of grades behind me followed in my footsteps in a little slightly different direction. He was also involved in the Vintage Gaming Club, or what it was after we graduated, and he ended up being one of the co-founders of Sentinels.
Wow.
Um, Small world, right? Coming out of
Yeah.
Ohio. And going to college, my first year, I really struggled as a student. I think a lot of people do.
hmm
I didn't feel ready, and I didn't have anything to ground me in terms of purpose. And in my sophomore year, I discovered the gaming club. It was a generic gaming club. They liked holding LANs, and I had no idea what a LAN was, but I was here for it anyway. Um, I played League of Legends at that time, and as luck would have it, in the fall of my sophomore year, we all heard about this thing called the Riot Collegiate program, and we applied to join it. I was president at the time of the league division of our land club, and we got accepted. So I was number 11. I was the 11th college club president to be accepted into the Riot Collegiate program, which means if one wants to act like other OGs in esports that I'm good friends with, um, I like to give some grief to him and say I'm OGer than he is. There are truly only 11 students that joined that prior to me at leadership level. But we have to remind ourselves that high school actually started before that, even in 2008, 2009 with HSEL, or excuse me, HSL, which turned into CSL afterwards. So Duran Parsing, his group are actually even more OGE than the Riot Collegiate Program folks.
Maybe
Just a fun little piece of history.
one day, Chris, we'll have you do a separate content piece with us that's like the whole collegiate history timeline,
I
and
could give you that.
you could
Yeah, I
give us
could.
the real OGs, the real OGs, and the real OGs along the way.
That's all ego, and a lot of it doesn't matter. But um, I'll tell you a separate OG funny story that I told another person that's relevant to this week, and it just cracked him up. It was fantastic. But anyway, we joined that Riot Collegiate Beta program. It was a Facebook group, so we're all active on Discord. We are active in so many different ways. We were active on Facebook. That's
Mhm.
that's how old this was, and I was I was not one of the first wave of Riot interns. That honor went to some other incredibly qualified people that have gone on to do a lot of really cool things in gaming. But I was tagged with the honor of being the first student presenter at the Riot Collegiate Summit in 2015. Um, and that was a real honor to go up on stage at the LCS studio in front of 150 of my peers, friends, Brandon Beck, Mark Merrill, Rivington, and introduce myself and say, hi, my name is White Boy Booty, and I'm here to tell you about working with your administration, because that was my gamer tag at the time, and I have the t-shirt to prove it. That was probably the most formative part of my college experience from a professional side of things. And I took that so seriously from that point on. My senior year, my parents wanted me to take the LSAT and take the path of pre-law. I scheduled the largest LAN of my life at the time on that day, and I skipped my LSAT and held an 800 plus person LAN at our basketball stadium. And I lied to my parents, telling them I just did horrible on the LSAT, and they were like, "No problem, we'll make you take it again." That was a separate story. But I took the proceeds from that LAN and I started my first company. And that company was founded with a number of some really, really good people. It was called All Mid. It's for All Midwest. And we were just a bunch of college graduate students that really wanted to keep doing what we were doing. We had no business plan, and we had no guidance, because I certainly was not qualified to be a leader at that point. But nevertheless, we got to work PAXs and Gen Con and all these really cool conventions that we would have no idea, like, we would have that opportunity after college. And one by one, we either moved up into the industry or moved on with our lives, as many do. I sold that company, and I joined and was one of the 3 co-founders of Uconnect Esports. It was myself, Dylan, and then another gentleman named Huntao, and we're all doing our own respective things. And Uconnect has done so many wonderful, incredible things since Anton and I left fairly early on in that. So all that credit goes to Dylan and what he had done. But that was in 2018, And at that point, I'd had enough. So I took about a 2-year break, and I didn't think I would return to gaming at all. Um, and then in 2020, when COVID really kicked off, I got a call from what at the time had been, I wouldn't call him one of my competitors, but he was someone that I knew of and someone that was doing things that I had wanted to do previously. His name was Justin, is Justin, and he is and was the CEO and founder of a LAN center called Game Arena. And he pretty much called me one day. I was in the car with my girlfriend. He said, "Hey, are you working?" And I was like, "No, not right now. I just got laid off. COVID." And he's like, "Awesome. You want a job?" And my girlfriend, now wife, was sitting next to me in the car, and she was like, "You know you want to say yes. Just say yes." And so I dragged it on for a little bit, but then I said yes, and that got us started. So a lot of people know me as someone at Esports Foundry, and Game Arena was a LAN center and is a LAN center in Columbus,
Woohoo!
and
Woo!
we grew Game Arena. The team that worked on external projects from the LAN was myself and a few others. We grew that to um what it is now. And what it is now is Esports Foundry.
All
So
right,
that
so
is almost everything,
almost.
because interchangeably, we also had a stint where I came back to the University of Cincinnati to get my MBA. I encourage anyone in Scholastic to get a higher education degree, or at the very most, a terminal degree, a PhD. It is necessary. And during that time, I had my co-op, as basically helping them build the University of Cincinnati esports program. So on the side, basically, of my studies and my employment, um, my internship credit was basically building $1 million lab, and getting that space ready for students, which is being used this day. And the club is hosting about 2 to 3 lands a semester, and they are doing so well in R6. So I really do want to shout out the Bearcats, because those guys got passion. The students are fantastic. And that brings us now to where we are today.
Yeah, small little side project there of building an entire esports lab from scratch. Sure, yeah. That sounds like a small little side project that works perfectly for you there, Chris. It takes a lot of brain power to do everything that Chris just described. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. But to help me out in the brain power department, I call on our sponsors of today's episode, Neuroptima. Final season is here, and whether you've got exams coming up or playoff games in your collegiate league, now's the time that you want to be at your absolute best. Don't compromise on your focus, and don't settle for those energy drinks designed to leave you jittery or feeling worse than before. Flow State by Neuroptima is designed to fuel your mind with 5 times the nootropics of traditional energy supplements and 21 cognitive enhancing compounds, so that you can focus for longer and actually feel better while doing it. Your focus deserves better. So make this final season your best yet, and check out Neuroptima's Flow State at neuroptima.gg. Use code CEN at checkout for 10% off your order. Thanks again to Neuroptima for sponsoring this episode of Torchbearers. Now that we're feeling refreshed, let's get back to my conversation with Chris. But want to, you said we're Esports Foundry, and I think that's a name that a lot of people in the collegiate space are aware of in some form or fashion, or one thing they did somewhere. But
Mm.
in some cases, they feel like some enigma behind the curtain,
Oh
right?
gosh, if
That's
that's your
like,
reputation.
well, no, you're helpful, right? But you're like also hard to pin down. Like, what is it that this group does? Because
Mm,
yeah, they support collegiate, and they support collegiate a lot in a lot of different ways and avenues, but I don't think many understand the full scope of what
yeah,
your
sure.
group does.
Yeah, we kind of define ourselves as dedicated supports. So a lot of organizations have a very frontal uh, s- position in the space. They are conferences. They do frontal league operations. They are doing their own events. And as a result, if you're doing those things, or if you're a team, you need to have a brand presence, right? Whether you're on Twitch or you're on YouTube or you're on Twitter, or your just name has to be everywhere. And that's not us. We are supports, which means we support others in doing great things. And that kind of, you can think of us as like Scholastic Switzerland, really, because we really don't, by virtue of what we do, we really don't have any beef with anybody. And we can do so much with anybody that allows us to kind of, as you said, have our hands in a lot of different projects. We do 5 things. And I will go through those 5 things. And at the end of it, you'll be like, holy moly, that's a lot. But at the end of the day, it's still only 5 things. So
Oh.
first and foremost, we do events for others. We do project management, we do staffing, and we do what a lot of people may know us for as equipment rentals. We have the largest fleet and inventory of gear in the United States within the Scholastic Esports market. We literally have access to and own ourselves through Game Arena and our own private traveling fleet, 100 computers. We've got tens of thousands of dollars of gears and cameras and stage gear and decor and broadcast equipment. We've got full Blackmagic gear that we can take anywhere. And it's really helpful because that's what we chose to invest in, so that other people don't have to necessarily invest in it. They can use it from us for a very cheap, affordable price, to where it makes sense to continue using us rather than buy it yourself. And that's kind of been like our modus operandi at the core of, we make it make sense to choose to use us to be collaborative. So for events like the CECC or other projects, we are kind of like that backbone. And that's where I think people see our name a lot. The second thing that we do is, as we have built and operated LAN centers through Game Arena, we have a very strong understanding of what it means to build a space for others and to operate it and to outfit it. So we also build facilities and outfit facilities. We can also sell gear to people who are looking to refurbish their facilities. So we do a lot of business with esports programs, school districts, private businesses, nonprofits, for that very means. And we do, double-digit facility builds a year, which is not a lot, but it's also a lot. And we do some really cool ones in places that one may not expect. Like we did one at a juvenile facility for troubled teens in Ohio. And you wouldn't really think about putting a gaming center in there, but at the same time, it really makes a lot of sense when these kids are going through really rough emotional or interpersonal times of their lives, and they need an outlet, and maybe Mario Kart is that outlet, because they don't really have an alternative. So we get to do a lot of really cool things with that. The third thing that we do is apparel. And we have, in the past, what we did is we partnered with and had a co-ownership with another apparel company that many of us know. It was called Esports Gear. We divested from that group earlier on in this year in Q2, and just went our separate ways. And we'd have a new apparel company that we have under our wing called Critical. And we've taken a lot of those operations in-house, and so we still do that. And I'm really excited for what the future has to hold, because those guys are just the greatest. And I really, really believe in that side of the business, and we really had to decide whether that was something we wanted to continue or not. And the answer was just unequivocally yes. Like, the people there are just so capable. But we also support others through our brand and such, that work for other names and companies, living up to our core mission and values. That's the third thing that we do. And the fourth thing that we do is marketing and media services. Just like many other groups, we have the same capabilities. We took some from pro esports, we took some from developer sides, and we took some from Scholastic. We bundled it all together, and we have our own unique spin on things, whether it's motion graphics or 3D renderings or building things out in Unreal Engine, for sales, sponsorship, or facility builds, media marketing, and things like that, video and video content editing and creative. We're really proud of what we're able to do, and we've been able to do things for the past 4 years through that lens. And then the last thing that we do now is a new vertical that it's not a new vertical, but we do center software management. We had a company called Metactics. It was a center software that we built for our own gaming center called Game Arena, and we have since refined it over the years, and we've relaunched a new version of it called Phoenix, and it'll get a little more outward attention probably in the upcoming new year. But that's not necessarily a Scholastic product. It makes sense for some. It doesn't make sense for all. But for anyone that wants to operate a gaming center in a commercial space, those things are required. And so we're pretty much one of two North American options. It's us or GG Leap. And we enjoy competing against them, but we also enjoy their team, and we've got good relations with GG Leap. Those are our 5 core pillars. The thing that we added this year is fabrication. And so we have since started entering the trophy business, and we've also started entering the prop business. And I'm really happy to say that we are in just the past quarter, the past 3 months, we're already at capacity. We have over 250 orders, and we will reopen that side of the business for the public come like March of next year. So if you're interested in a custom trophy, hit us up for that too. And that is pretty much Esports Foundry in a nutshell.
A very small nutshell, clearly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But you were talking a little bit about this with us before we started recording. You've sent out so many trophies different places. You had 3 different shipments happening this weekend. Plus, your team is at one of those 3 events, helping out on the event management side.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a break for this group? It feels like you're just going to keep churning, and there's nothing, like, there's always something happening for you all, at least by the sounds of it.
That's by design.
Yeah.
We operate our business. What we take great pride in is that we've never raised a Series A. For those who don't know, a Series A is typically what a startup company will do. They'll for their first round of money. So a lot of the companies in our space have gone through a Series A or a Series B at some point in their career to hire and to invest. We've never done that. We've grown step by step, one at a time, over the course of 4 years. And as a result of that, everything that we do, we're not responsible to, some nameless investor or group behind the curtain. We're responsible to ourselves. And that requires us to make sure that we are working all the time.
Yeah.
In our space, the summer is probably the closest thing that we have to an off season, the month of June, really the end of May and month of June. But I'm not sure if that will be the case anymore. If we do our jobs right, we're busy throughout the entire year. It's just a different type of busy, and different members of our team are working on different things.
And now, of course, you all have added helping out with an additional rather large undertaking. And that's what we're here to talk about today in these Scholastic Esports Awards.
Yeah.
So, how did this event in particular come together? Let's give the synopsis of the story for those who might just be catching up with what kind of has gotten us to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Scholastic Esports Awards are a really big collaborative project, first and foremost. This is not a Esports Foundry and Friends type of project. We've had the real pleasure of doing a lot of different award projects. We do the Esports U Awards. We've done the Game Hers Awards. We did the Scholars with the Esports Awards in 2023. And we've had a lot of learnings from a lot of these different projects. And we saw an opportunity when in August the uh, Esports Awards announced that they were going to move to Riyadh, and there was a public response to that, especially from the Scholastic community. And so we reached out to them and we said, hey, we understand what you're going through right now, and we know what you're doing is going to be the best for the Esports Awards long term. And we asked them, can we have your permission to take what was started and keep it going? Because we believe that Scholastic, at least in North America, deserves to have some form of recognition on a national level. But what does that mean? And they were very gracious and said yes. And so we owe a lot of thanks in the Scholastic industry. Owes a lot of thanks to the Esports Awards for giving. They didn't have to give their support for something like this. We could have done it anyway, but it was really important that we followed that culture of reaching out and communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of what we wanted to do was, we recognized that part of the reason why there are so much controversy with awards and award systems is that it's never it seems to always be about the concept of this is the pinnacle without involving the base. And what I mean by that is we took it very seriously to involve as many of the national conferences and national organizations as we absolutely could. And we approached each and every one of them, and acting as kind of that neutral party. We're not a conference. We're not endorsing ourselves above something else. We're not hosting this at an event that would add greater value or leverage over another brand. We were able to accomplish that, and we were able to bring together 18 Scholastic partners to the table to not only endorse this project, but work alongside with us on this project and be a part of this project and make this and have the opportunity to contribute their own programming and their own objectives to make it something more. That was the main motivator, but there was also a second. And it was a little more of a business motivator, and I'll explain that. And that is that we've observed, as we have now 27 different conferences and leagues just in collegiate alone, as these organizations grow, everyone wants to do more things. We just want to, right? We're social, and we're in a social space, but the cost of doing so, there's a real cost. And not every organization can meaningfully bear those costs well. In other words, they're doing it at a loss for their community. But at the same time, if there were, for example, 27 NACE summits every summer, who's going to go to all of those? You're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, no one will go to all of those. And if someone were from outside the industry to look at us and examine what does Scholastic look like, they'll point at that and be like, yeah, these guys don't know what they're doing. They're so fractured. They're so tiny. There's no one here. I always say that if you want to understand the games industry, you go to GDC. If you want to understand the entertainment side of that industry, you go to PAX or you go to DreamHack, right? In the past, you would go to E3. If you want to understand collegiate, where do you go? Because you could go to any large LAN, but you're only going to get that side. You could go to any state area, but you're only going to get that side. This will be the first national event that has truly all of the national presence. I won't say everybody, because we intentionally have not brought up and elevated I won't say smaller, but I'll say regional or exclusive conferences or leagues. This year, that would be too much.
Mm-hmm.
But from a national point, everyone is involved, and that was very important. And so we can, for the first time, say, everyone's here. This is the national awards, and that is really
Cue
cool.
the cue Lifelight. Do, 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 do. Everyone's here, right? Um,
Exactly.
but it should be a cool event and a cool partnership
Mhm.
overall that you're kind of, I mean, what? You're the ringleader of all the acts? Is that, how would you describe your role then in
Herder of cats.
organizing this? Herder of cats. Okay.
Yeah. We're with these types of projects, communication is really important.
Hmm.
Um, and you only have so many hours in a day, but you have to make sure that you're keeping everybody in the loop. You have to make sure you're giving everybody the chance that they can hear their voice, and you have to make sure that you're balancing their responsibilities with your mission. So we have turned down certain sponsors or partners because we would really like their money, but it doesn't make sense. We've taken a number of people who've submitted wonderful content and programming and told them in the most polite way possible, what you're submitting is an advertisement for your own services, and that is not what we're trying to do here. Um, so you'll either have to integrate it differently, or we'll have to say no. And we've kind of kept that culture very strongly, and it's all about consistent messaging and making sure that everybody is in the loop. Um, and yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. Do you feel like, as someone who's observing this from the outside, right? I'm not involved in any of the behind the scenes stuff.
Mm.
Where do you feel like the culture that is being built around this event has been different in comparison to other shows, other award shows in the past that have been done? I guess the question kind of here is, what makes this attempt at doing the nationwide collegiate and scholastic awards different than other attempts at this in the past? Because there have been multiple.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we did is we included people,
Yeah,
but that may not mean anything to the people who aren't, to quote Hamilton, in the room where it happens, and it's very
right.
important. So we started off with transparency, and we started off with distributed agency. And what I mean by that is the two what I will call central spokes of this wheel, Esports Foundry and Voice, who are co-partners on this. We created the framework of what we wanted to do, and then we distributed that framework to our partners, and our partners helped us appoint a steering committee that was made up of appointees that they recommend who may or may not be affiliated with that group. So the NECC submitted some people, and ISEA submitted some people, Generation Esports, and I go down the list all the way through. That steering committee helped create the nomination and voting framework, and they voted on it. And then once their job was done, we said thank you to those people, and we appointed a new voting committee of different people. Because I think the biggest criticism that others have given is that there's this Illuminati of the same people who are on the same panels and in the same things, and if you don't include them, then you're boosted, and if you do include them, then you're in the same clique, and the people outside are just staring at you with your arms crossed, wondering when it's their turn. And it was really important that we included everybody, so it was their turn. Um, so we have a lot of new names that haven't been in some of those roles or involvements, and we've had some of the old names that have. But either which way, proud to say we didn't directly pick those people. It was the partners that had the most input. Um, and then likewise, we give the partners as much leeway to add their own programming or not add their own programming, because not everyone's going to have their time in the schedule to attend. We're not forcing them to attend, but we're very grateful that the vast majority of them are attending. And even if you can't attend, you're still supporting the mission and promoting it outward. Um, that has been the main differentiator, and I think it's reflective because I'm proud to say that we still, while we have 48 hours left of voting, a little more than that, we have surpassed over 11,000 unique finalist votes that have been cast, which tells me that people care. And I can tell you, having been on many of the other committees, that that is a record. So it speaks for itself.
And that's fantastic to hear and awesome to see. But I'm sure we'll see more and more as we start getting closer to the event proper. But you mentioned attempting to make sure that everyone feels as included as possible and
As included
in
as they want to be. Yes.
as included as they want to be, sure. And with that, you it feels like you're doing a massive undertaking if you're trying to respond to collegiate. But in addition to collegiate, you're also catering this towards K-12
Mhm.
and the other side of this. Why was it important to the overall group to include K-12 in this conversation? Not to say that like collegiate should have its own space. I mean, I don't really care one way or the other, right? But why was it important to have everything integrated as a part of this one event?
Yeah, I think it's culturally very important because again, the mission statement that we're really coming from is we're trying to put our money where our mouth is when we say we're observing a trend where if we're in the games industry and we're looking at Scholastic, we're looking and we're trying to figure out where the community's at because people are paying attention to us, but they just don't know which horse to put their money on because there's too many horses, which is a good thing. It would be detrimental to our own vision to be exclusionary to K-12. And we're very grateful that when we approached many of the key actors, stakeholders in K-12, they were really, it was a no-brainer.
Mhm.
They were like, absolutely, we would love to be a part of this. And so what has kind of happened as a consequence has been actually that there's been, I feel like, some relations between some partners or some organizations that one might think that they have some beef or, there may be some past beef. Some of it gets squashed when you're working together.
Mhm.
And we see that, and we've also been able to have this headwind because at least in K-12, they've already squashed a lot of their own beef and they're already working together more collaboratively than collegiate is. So I think we can take a page out of each other's books in terms of motivation and inspiration. Um, so that it really hasn't been much more difficult to include K-12. And I have to say that seeing them operate within their own K-12, voting committee and their own steering committee, because each side got to write their own rules, watching their own engagement and their own discussion and their own empowerment was impressive. It to me as someone who's more of a college focus and I'm less of an expert on K-12, I didn't know what to expect, but what I saw was just the same level of professionalism that I would expect to see in any other branch of gaming, um, minus the stigmatism, right? So we're breaking down our own walls, and if I have those walls, then surely others do too.
Mhm.
Um, and so having us all working together helps dispel some of those inherent either biases or incorrect suppositions that we just natively have because we're human.
And I think that's a large part of what a event like this is trying to do in the first place, right? Is bring
Mhm.
everyone together and be like, let's celebrate something for once, right? Rather than continue yelling into the void on our social media platform of choice. Um, but yeah, that's awesome to hear and awesome to see that the K-12 side has been just as proactive and involved. And I know as well, the two-year universities haven't felt like they've had the platform to talk, and you're also doing your best to amplify those voices as well.
Mhm. Yes, we deliberately addressed what we had viewed as a big problem within awards and acknowledgement, which is that I'll use another organization. I won't name the name and I won't name the people just to keep it fair, but it's a very consistent problem. When you talk about program of the year and you have a number of finalists from different backgrounds, the Division 1 school always has the home field advantage. If it's voting based, they're going to have the advantage. If it's reputation based, they're still probably going to have the advantage. And it's not representative of what, our 750 to 800 programs across North United States look like. right? They look more like the other than the former, but nevertheless, they won't be acknowledged because their budget's smaller, because their number of teams they have is smaller, because the number of championship wins they have is smaller. But some of these programs have been around for 5, 6, 7 years. The program directors have been in those seats and impacting those students and changing people's lives for that long. And just because you're not loud does not mean you're not doing. So
Right.
we created a class system to summarize. And so that class system will have winners from different categories of schools, which will guarantee visibility appropriately.
So I assume right now that class system is 4-year, 2-year, at least on the collegiate side. Hypothetically, not to tie you down and put you on the spot here, right? Is there a world where more classes get added, or is the plan to kind of stick with those? Obviously, I mean, in no small part, it's probably up to the steering committee, right, to decide most of that for any given year. What is there a future for that to expand? How much is too much? Because you could kind of go a lot of different ways, I feel like, with that idea.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. We're doing a lot of things for the first time,
Right.
and output does not reflect initial enthusiasm. We have a lot of ideas, and the committees had a lot of ideas of different awards and different categories and different things that they felt were important to them. We talked a lot about like legacy awards, for example. We talked a lot more about organizational and partner awards. But the reality is we currently have 132 finalists across 20 different categories on K-12 and college. So let's make sure we do the first one right. We have as much time as the public will give us grace. And I think that doing it correctly with incremental improvement is much better than trying to do everything all at once and tripping all over yourself. Because there's going to be a lot of eyes on this, whether we, for better or for worse. And we really want to make sure that what we do, it's not about us as Esports Foundry or of any of the other partners. It's about making sure that the people who are having their moment properly have their moment, and the right people, not to play God and say you win or you lose, but the people who win are able to win happily knowing that people are not going to brigade or go off on social media tirades asking why, because that no one that just tears us all down, and we've seen that too much.
Yeah. So, once again, all that's well and good, but now let me put you on the spot anyway. You're probably not supposed to be picking favorites, but if you had to highlight an award category or two that you're particularly excited about, do you have some in mind that might come up?
Yeah,
Just
I have
from
a
a personal bias perspective.
so Club of the Year. The University of
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bearcats did get through the nomination period, both with enough quantity of nominations and quality of nominations. Um, I am a fan of any club program that is able to go out beyond and organize LAN events without the administrational support. That is the definition of a Club of the Year. And they were able to do that, not just once, not just twice, but I think 3 or 4 times. And so I'm definitely biased against my alma mater. But what I'm also really excited about is that there is a little bit of variety between the K-12 and collegiate awards. The K-12 community was not, and we were surprised about this, they were not as restrictive to the highbrow categories. So we have a best jersey of the year award, right? And I think that's cool, and I'm really excited to see who wins. To put a more somber tone onto things and take a little more serious tone, we were really excited initially about the Game Changer Award, not because of the name, but because of the concept that it acknowledges people who have really done a lot for DEI and in particular representation in our space. And we ended up renaming the award in respect and in honor and remembrance of Dr. Phil Alexander, who passed away this year, this fall semester, for after a long medical battle. And he was a real big ally of everything that that award represents at the University of Miami, which was, depending on who you talk to, the first or second public institution to adopt a collegiate esports program. Um, and so we're naming that after him, and that award holds a lot of weight
Hmm.
for that reason. As someone who's personally known him, but even if I had not personally met him, we still would have done so due to the legacy, not only the Miami University of Ohio, but also what him and his director have been able to create. So that is something I'm very excited for.
Yeah, I think that'll be in of itself a really cool moment, and
Hmm.
I think it enters the door here as obviously this is a new event, but the hope, right, is that this event carries on, and I think from my perspective too, as someone who, for all intents and purposes, now is just kind of getting his start, on the professional side of things. It'll be fun to watch how this continues to develop and evolve year over year, adding in more of that sentimental weight and significance behind some of these awards as you join the list of people that have won historically and, but the opportunity for new awards to come up and showcase another group of people and another set of people.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm very confident that there'll be a year two. We're gonna wait and see the audience reception. Obviously, we're gonna do our best to put on a good show. And part of putting on a good show is not just the awards itself, but it's what
Mhm.
happens before the awards and after. Um, we recognize that there's a lot of different people with a lot of things they want to say in our space, and there's a lot of conversations and topics that are really important to all of us. And so we've been very deliberate about curating a day and a half of programming on Saturday and Sunday to where those conversations can happen. Um, I'm really, really proud to say that there's not a single panel that will take place at this event because we don't want to have a single moderator taking up the time of the subject matter experts and what they have to say. We have presentations, we have keynotes, we have workshops and small groups. We don't have a single panel. And that's been very deliberate from the start. Um, Something that I've personally wanted to see. No more panels.
Mhm.
Um, and then we'll also have just as much engaging content for the students, for people who just want to be there and vibe, hang out with the homies, meet and see new people, socialize. We're going to have a vendor village. We're going to have a lot of really fun social activities. Um, I'm just really excited for what all of that will turn into. And I just really personally hope that everyone has as much fun participating as we've had fun coming up with really cool ideas.
While you're socializing at the Scholastic Esports Awards, you can wear some free merch representing collegiate esports. That's right, our sponsors of today's episode at Playfly just announced their free Spring 2025 merch drop, which is available to all participants and includes early access to their latest college esports t shirt release and a sticker pack featuring a selection of their exclusive iconography. Participants are only responsible for shipping and handling. For more details on this and everything else they've announced for the spring, scan the QR code on screen right now or visit playflycollege.gg. Thanks again to Playfly College Esports for sponsoring this episode of Torchbearers. Now, let's return to my conversation with Chris. I mean, it sounds like it'll be a good time, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, as someone who knows Columbus and knows the area, of course, I'm excited to go back, right? I don't get the opportunity to hang around campus all that often anymore, so, only occasional visits every once in a while, and this will be one of them in kind of a unique, environment, which will be I obviously awesome for me to be a part of. But why should people come? Like, all right, maybe I'm not from the Midwest. I'm from Texas. I'm from California. I've got my own events that I can go to meet people, to network with people. What's the sell on coming to the Scholastic Esports Awards, especially in its first year?
Yeah, I think that if you want to support any one of your 132 finalists, then you should be here. Because at the end of the day, it's about them, not about us.
Mhm.
That being said, if you want to, if you felt any resonance of what I said, where there are conversations and questions that are important to you about our industry, then you should have them here. Because I can tell you and promise you the right people are going to be here that also want to have those conversations. And if you are looking, if you are a professional looking for real 102, 103 level knowledge, we're cutting the intro level bullshit to, use some harsher language. That will happen here. If you're a student and you're looking for inspiration and development and you want to connect with people who have, quote, done it or in the process of doing it, you will meet them here. And it's not even about meeting them. We're literally going to hand you blueprints at this event. Almost every presentation and small group and workshop has actionables. So if we're going to walk you through the intricacies of TOing larger brackets, diverse games, we're going to give you tools on how to do so. You will walk away not just listening to someone talk, you're going to get hands-on scenario-based learnings, and you're going to get a tool that you can use and take home back for your own lands. If you are looking to have conversations about the state of our industry, there's no better place right now. If you are a professional that is in a interlocking business that engages in Scholastic, then you absolutely should be here because there's no better place to talk to coaches and directors that are decision makers and financial advisors or deciders that will either buy or not buy the product you are selling. They'll be here. And if you are anyone that wants to do business with any one of the conferences or leagues and organizations, they're going to be here. In fact, both the ECAC and NECC are hosting in-person business meetings and social activities and developmental pieces of programming here at this event. NACAD is hosting a Midwestern clinic. One of the things that they do for NACAD will be here at the Scholastic Esports Awards. We are going to have a high school combine presented by and organized by League OS. And so if you are looking to recruit students, the top players on the League OS platform are being invited to show up here. There are so many reasons as to why you should come. And I think the only reason why you should not come is A, if you don't feel that you're ready, then don't force it. And if financial assistance is an issue, then by all means, we do not want to be a reason where you stretch your bank. But if you are able to do so, or you're able to carpool to do so, or you're able to obtain university funding to do so, then I highly recommend that this is something that will not be a waste of your time.
And it feels like it's being built for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Above all else, probably, yeah, the awards are the awards and the main draw, but it feels like you're building out the event and the schedule of the event more with that in mind that there's going to be a lot more out of this than the awards themselves. There's going to be a lot more
Yes,
opportunities to engage in that conversation and have that meaningful interaction between people that wouldn't normally otherwise get the chance to talk face to face.
I'm not going to be arrogant and say that this is the Scholastic Esports Convention or whatever, right? We're not GDC for Scholastic. We are the Scholastic Esports Awards. Now, if this creates momentum for other collaborations between partners to create their own things, I'm all for that. If this falls on its head, but we walk away with something else that can create, something more that's beautiful, I'm all for that. And if this succeeds wildly and wonderfully, and people walk away with an incredible time, then yes, the awards are the anchor for this year, and very likely they'll be the anchor for next year. But there also could very well be a scenario in which the programming is a separate anchor in and of itself. And if people are really looking for that level of conversation and connectivity, I think that there's value for that. But it doesn't have to be us doing those things, and we're not the only ones doing those things. NACAD, for example, again does these things all over the country. um, we just want there to be more of it.
And more of it there will be, I'm sure, as we continue to mature as an overall ecosystem, which is fantastic. And
Hmm.
speaking of maturity, it's year one. I have to imagine, as someone who has organized events myself, not necessarily of this scale, but probably the fact that it's even larger means that there's going to be more of this. You probably have a regret on one or two things that you would have liked to have changed, but now it's too late. What is it that you think you might try to push for changing next year should this event happen again?
I'm going to be really honest with you. I've done this for so long that I will say with no degree of ego, but also no degree of falseness, that I don't have any regrets in terms of what I've programmed.
Sure.
The only thing that I regret is not having more hours in the day to contact more people sooner and have more conversations, because we're in December, my dude, and the amount of people who have either come out of the woodwork or responded to prior emails or other conversations, and they're like, "Dang, if only I knew about this, X months ago." Well, we started in September, realistically.
Yeah.
We haven't had much runway, but what we've been able to accomplish them, I'm so proud of our teams collectively. Um, so I have no regrets on that end. I only want there to be as many people as possible and many of the right people possible,
Mhm.
because I know and I have so much trust and faith in what we're programming to be good, because it's the community that's come forward and offered it all.
Right.
I don't have to work hard to, mastermind and puppeteer each and every schedule and each and everything, and force people to come in and do the thing that I want them to do. They've all volunteered. They've all, I shouldn't say volunteered. They've come forward and say, "This is important to me. I want to include this at your thing." Fuck
Mhm.
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. But let's do it within the confines of our mission values, and that's where we've been very strict on, and that has also been one of the reasons why I also have no regrets. There will be no unipolar advertisements. This won't feel like a business summit that it might otherwise feel. You won't feel like you're just sitting there killing the hours until you will sit down for more hours going through an award show before you're able to party. We are here to have fun and learn and communicate, and we're also here to celebrate the members of our community that have done so much. And just as others will say, we're not celebrating everybody. There are so many people who are deserving in so many different categories in so many different spaces. To those people, I tell you that I see you, we see you, and that you have not been forgotten. We are simply doing our best that we can with the time that we have, and that we will make sure that your voices are included in the following years to come.
On that note of the event being turned around rather quickly, I think that is probably the quickest booking to event ever in the Ohio Union in the past 10 years. I know that place that we're going, obviously, for most of this event. I do not imagine that they very often get events of this scale within like 4 months lead time and notice. So I don't know what strings that you and uh, Dr. John Price had to pull over there, but more applause to you all for being able to pull this all together. Certainly,
It wasn't as I think it was just the right timing, right time, right
yeah.
place. We did RFP out this venue, or this event to a number of venues. We got some really good submissions, and we got some submissions that shocked us. Like,
Hmm.
wow, this is an incredible opportunity. When we heard from the Ohio Union that not only was the room in which the awards are going to happen available, but we also had rooms on all 3 floors of the building.
Yeah.
We will literally have over 100,000 square feet of programmable space in this union on what is effectively back to school first week of campus, weekend. Like, this building is going to be alive of students and us as guests. It made a lot of sense.
Hmm.
It makes a lot of sense to do this on a campus. It makes a lot of sense to do
Yeah.
this on a place that is accessible in a major city with with an international airport, that have hotels that
Hmm.
are either in walking and driving distance, where the cost of living is not too inflated and is centrally located for a majority of the United States population.
Yeah.
Ohio hit all those capabilities. So next year, will we go back to Ohio? Will we go to another place? We will let that remain to be seen. But at the end of the day, our goal is inclusivity and our goal is accessibility. So wherever that ends up being, we'll find out.
Well, a couple more things before we go, Chris, including a question from our sponsors of this episode, Neuroptima. Uh, they are curious. Obviously, they have products that focus on enhancing focus, cognition, and those sorts of things. Esports is one of those things that requires a lot of focus and dedication, both on and off the stage. How do you think events like this help students and educators sharpen their skills and stay motivated to continue performing at their best?
How do events like the Scholastic Esports Awards help encourage and motivate students? I think that answer comes down to something that I hold really core to my being, which is why Esports Foundry was so interested in doing this to begin with. And that is this sentence: recognition is not self masturbatory, right? Award shows are not for the sake giving an award. An award does not exist to be given out, it exists because it was earned. And if an award can be earned, it means that someone has done something worthy of that recognition and to tell their story, because their story should inspire someone else to either say, if they did it, I can, or if they did it, then I can do my thing. And my thing might be totally different. We want to inspire people and encourage people to understand and know that their dreams are achievable, their contributions are seen and heard, and that during the toughest times of whatever they may want to do, whether they're doing gaming or not, sometimes it can feel that we're, Sisyphus, we're pushing this boulder up the mountain. And sometimes we just might want to step to the side and let it roll back down and, pick a different boulder. But at the end of the day, what we're saying when we do these types of things is, no, you keep doing that because you're doing something that is affecting others in a positive way, and we think that's really cool. That's all. That's all. That's what it's about.
I think it's something in our space too, where we don't often, it's not often that you get a bunch of interaction with a bunch of other people that get it,
Hmm.
right? There's not somebody that I can walk down in my office building, walk down the hall and talk to them about whatever's going on. There's somebody that like kind of gets it, right? But like there's no one I can go to that understands exactly where I'm coming from, knows the kind of situation that I'm in, and knows and can help navigate those kinds of problems or recognize successes. And I think that's why events like this help celebrate those sorts of things. Because sure, we get the chance to talk to each other online every once in a while, but when you get to stand up there and shake someone's hand, it's a different feeling altogether.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, we celebrate our fandom in various different ways, and to many of us gamers, this fandom that we have of gaming and esports, has its degrees, right? Some people are hardcore gamers, some people are casual gamers, but at the end of the day, club started not because gaming was so big, it was because so many people loved gaming. And we are here doing all this programming and giving out these awards, not because we are trying to, you know, in some degree we are, but we're not trying to gather the best and brightest for that sake. We're gathering people who care about what we care about. And it really goes back to the question you asked, like, why should you come? Well, if you care about this, you should be here because the other people who care about this so deeply will be here too.
Yeah.
And, maybe and definitely you've got your tribe back home. You've got your community back home that you can talk to, vent to, laugh about. Whether it is that you're tracking, game stats on your favorite conference, or whether it's your, talking about scrimmage or practice or clash that you might be doing later on, or whether you may just not really care. You're just so happen to be really talented at clicking heads or, insta locking top lane. That's all good, man. Like, or gal, it's all good. You may be here not even because you care too much, but because your friend or your significant other cares a lot about it, and you've become welcomed as a result on your own and made your own friends. You should be here too. Um, I think this is the start, but it's also a continuation point of a lot of our journeys. So why not?
As it turns out, a collegiate ecosystem that is only 10 years old is still in its infancy, as I don't think all of us want to admit all that often, but we should start admitting a little bit more. And on the topic of overall collegiate ecosystem things, all right, so the last question we like to ask all of our guests is if you could snap your fingers to change one thing about the collegiate esports landscape, what would it be and why?
I have exactly the answer, and you are not going to anticipate it at all. I would like esports programs to begin focusing on and exporting student talent into the workforce that are trained on business development and sales best practices. And I'll tell you why. As a business operator, what I observe in our ecosystem is that all the biggest products that are built in here, 90% of those are negotiated, sold, and pitched by people who do not know what they're talking about. And that is not an insult. It
Right,
is that they are grown men and women who have professional backgrounds in sales and sports or advertising or media that are talking to brands now about gaming because now that is their job,
right,
but they do not have the background in Scholastic Esports.
right.
And the other side of the coin problem is that you have students who are very passionate and very creative and very innovative who see and know what they want, but they don't know how to ask for it. And they also don't know what the expectation and standard of the minimum standard of good work in that field of our industry looks like. And so you have a lot of people that are we are just in a non-optimized talent workflow portion of our industry. Sports and entertainment have best practices for how to sell media rights, how to sell sponsorship, how to commercialize events, how to do, a county fair. There is a guru of that has taught that, and there are schools that will teach you that specific skill very well. And there are double digit of agencies across the country whose sole revenue driver is we do county fairs really well.
Yeah.
You don't have that in our industry. And until we have that in our industry, we are going to be constantly working on and worrying about revenue and monetization, not for the sake of profit, but for the sake of reaching uh, par and sustainability. And when you are unable to obtain your revenue monetization goals from that avenue of the world, then you have to start being really creative with what we'll call affectionately new money. And that's where you go big game hunting for whales and you get these brands or you find these strategies to extract as much value as you can to do your thing. and then you hop onto the next and the next and the next and the next. And those activations can go well or they can go poorly, and many times they don't repeat, or they don't repeat for a long time. That is the cause of poor business development, and that's a cause of poor sales. Not a lot of people want to work in sales, but I will tell you right here, right now, and put money down on my name to say this. If I could hire every single student that graduates from an esports program with a sales background and a sales training proven pipeline, I will hire them. I will fire quickly if they don't perform or are unable to perform, but I will also hire them quickly.
Yeah.
If you want a job in our industry, being in a revenue producing role is the quickest way to get full-time employment at this current juncture.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're a student listening, you should go take a sales class or two. And if you are a professor listening to the podcast that has some involvement in esports, try to work with your business classes to get some cross promo there going. Because yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And sales might be a cutthroat place, but even in sports, it's where a vast majority of master's students end up going. Is they go to sales first before they get the chance to do something else. So
Well, not
uh,
only that, but also if you want to make more money,
yeah,
then produce more money. And right now, for lack of, to kind of harp on it further, like let's really look at where our state of our industry is right now. We have a what I will affectionately call a abundance of broadcast professionals
yeah,
at this time. There are more people who know vmix than I could shake a stick at, whereas even 4 years ago that was kind of like a gatekept term. That was like the secret, right? And you also have a number of esports programs that I can literally pay an esports program to outsource my broadcast to. And I can bring all of my cameras and my TD station, and I can literally just take a feed and push it remotely over the internet and have someone states away manage it for me on student dollars. And it's not going to be much different from a professional level quality because the students are so good.
right.
So my broadcast house has incredible amounts of competition. If I want to do tournament operations, that has a lot of competition because I'm also competing with industry folks on these
Hmm.
types of contracts. If I want to start my own event, I need money. If I want to create a new conference, I'll need money. Um, you either are going to get that from the schools, which we may or may not be there, or you're going to get it from brands, or you're going to get it in some other way. And the really important thing to take away with when I say sales and business development, sales is sales and has its own connotation and reputation, but business development is the art of creating connectivities and pathways between businesses to do business better, which is a long way of saying it's not just sales, it's partnerships. It's
Yeah.
not just partnerships, it's revenue strategies, it's integration strategies, it's what our industry needs. Um, and if you do it right, it's not slimy. If you do it right, it helps a lot of people. If you do it right, you can do some really cool creative things. If you do it right, then you can scale exponentially doing some really incredible projects. We need more of that. We don't have enough of that. We are so lacking in that. And it is very evident and visible by the people who are good at that, whether they are currently a director or they're in the field like myself. The organizations that have those carries, they show.
Hmm.
And it's not because they're special. It's not because they have a secret sauce. I'm a B tier salesperson at best. In when it comes to business development, like I would drown if you put me in the logistics industry. You put me in, like, give us a real endemic salesperson. Oh my God, they'll sell millions of dollars and they'll
Right.
make hundreds of thousands of dollars for themselves.
Hmm.
So I'm telling you to all students, like, do that and do it quickly. And I'll put you on payroll.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks for joining us and giving very detailed answers to the questions we asked. Is there anything else you'd like to mention as we wrap this episode up? Floor is yours, my friend.
I feel like I've yapped professionally for too much. I might as well have been
Well,
playing Valorant this entire time. I haven't, I promise. But thank you. I just want to say thank you to
yeah.
you and the entire College Esports News crew. You guys do really incredible work, really necessary work. I'm a really big fan of your work, your coverage, and I hope that you never stop and that you continue because we're also appreciative. And I think it's really important to share stories, share voices, and tell the community what's up because we can't do it all by ourselves.
hmm
And so just wanted to say thank you for having me on and listening to me talk about the awards and all these other things as well.
Well, on behalf of the CEN crew, thank you all collectively for having stories to tell. That makes our jobs that much easier. Chris, thanks again for joining us talking a little bit about the Scholastic Esports Awards. You just listened to Torchbearers by College Esports News. Once again, we'd like to thank Chris Postell for being my guest on this episode and coming to talk about the Scholastic Esports Awards. We'd also like to thank our sponsors before we go one last time. Our second to last question in that conversation was brought to you by Neuroptima. Be sure to check out their products to give you the edge on your final exams this semester or some of that off-season practice as you look ahead for the spring. You can use code CEN at checkout for 10% off your order at neuroptima.gg. Secondly, Playfly College Esports just released their Spring 2025 Roadmap to Registration, which details several major changes coming to their competitions next year. Schools can submit their varsity applications for the upcoming Spring 2025 season and the 2025 through 2026 academic year now and register for all competitions starting on December 10th. Details on the spring merch drop and Tournament of Champions at CECC May Madness will be available in the coming weeks. Scan the QR code on screen right now or visit www.playflycollege.gg for more information. As always, I was your host, Kenneth Brasina. Jared Vanderweel is our project manager, Ashton Lewis is our graphic designer, V. Tran is our editor, Sheridan Shea helped record this episode, and Derek Santiago is creative director of CEN. Be sure to follow CEN on X, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram to stay up to date on all things college esports. And check out our website at collegeesportsnews.org. We hope you enjoyed listening to Torchbearers this semester for our first season. If you have suggestions for future guests and topics, please send them in to us via X. Thanks again for listening, and keep carrying the flame.